Yeah, as introduced, we wanted to look at the effects that simulated phishing campaigns had on the perception, stress, and self-efficacy of employees. So I'll jump right into the context of a study. What did we do? We cooperated with a large-scale manufacturing company, and they decided to do a simulated phishing campaign as part of their security awareness measures. And they decided to send one phishing email to every employee. And these simulated phishing emails, you could either click on them and fall for the test, and then you would get a sort of little awareness training with steps that you could follow to do better next time. Or you could report the email and via a report phishing button and get a congratulations message. So yeah, so these two groups was the sample that we wanted to look at, and we wanted to compare these two groups. Yeah, what did we want to compare? So the first thing was the general perception of the campaign. What did people think about the campaign? And yeah, one thing we had the ability to, right after people clicked or reported a phishing email, embed a questionnaire. And this was good because we could measure like the instantaneous effect that the campaign had on the stress and other variables. So yeah, in the questionnaire, we asked questions about the perceived importance of IT security in general, of IT security training, and we asked about the perceived effectiveness of simulated phishing campaigns and online phishing training. And attached to the questionnaire was also an invitation for an interview that was scheduled a little bit later. And in this interview, we also asked open questions in the questionnaire, what the people thought about the campaign, about the effectiveness, and also what changes they would like to see. And in the interview, we also asked about the perception, what they thought about the effectiveness, and also things like the communication, how the employees communicated about the campaign. So this was the first thing, the general perception. The second thing that we wanted to measure was stress. And we figured that probably the people that clicked on the link were more stressed than the people that reported it. So we asked questions about stress, how people, if people felt stressed right after clicking or reporting the mail, and we wanted to compare these two groups. So we had one problem, and the problem was that we did not do a before and after measurement. So we could only measure right after clicking on the mail. So it would have been possible that if one group was more stressed, that it wasn't because of the email, but that they clicked on the email because they were stressed. So we also asked a sort of a comparison question. So compared to before clicking or reporting, did you feel more stressed? So these were our stress measurements. And for the interview, we also asked about how did you feel stressed after clicking or reporting, or did you see other people get stressed? The third thing was the self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the belief that in the ability to successfully perform a task. And in this case, it was the self-efficacy regarding phishing. So we also implemented a questionnaire where we asked about phishing self-efficacy. And in the interview, we also asked about this and if they successfully reported a phishing email, if they saw others successfully reporting a phishing email, and if they got feedback and encouragement by the company, because these three things are kind of the sources of self-efficacy, and they help to increase self-efficacy. So yeah, a short overview of our study. We did a study in a company. They did a simulated phishing campaign, and we looked at the two groups, employees that clicked and reported. So, off to the results. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, we cooperated with the company with 16,000 employees, but only about 7,000 did either click or report the email. And this is because a lot of people probably just ignored the email or deleted the email or reported it via any other measure. So our sample was just these two groups. Yeah, and of the about 4,500 people that clicked, we got about 300 people filled out the questionnaire, and of the 3,000 people that reported, about 100 filled out the questionnaire for the reporters. And the open questions, a few people less answered this. And we also did in-depth interviews with 21 people. So, yeah, what were our results? I hope you can see it, it's a little bit small. For the results of the general perception, we did not see many significant differences between the groups, but we saw some slightly significant differences. And this was the case for the variable, the perceived importance of ITS training, and this was significantly higher for people that clicked compared to people that responded, which kind of makes sense that people that failed the phishing mail thought that this training was more important and that they needed more training. And this was also something that we saw in the interviews, which we'll see later. And also the perceived effectiveness of phishing campaigns was higher for people that reported, which also kind of makes sense because those were the people for which the campaign was effective and they succeeded. Yeah, so our interview results about the general perception. In general, people perceived the campaign as good and effective. They liked this form of training, but they also wanted more training and also other form of trainings, for example, training in presence or something like this. And they also desired more feedback because the only feedback that they got was when interacting with the mail, getting a message after reporting or clicking on the mail, and like months later, some sort of statistics about the effectiveness of the campaign. And what we also saw, which was interesting, was regarding the communication, because people didn't really communicate with other employees about the campaign. And this was because they thought that they shouldn't communicate about the campaign because they sort of didn't want to rob other people of this surprise moment that the campaign had, of this teachable moment, as we call it. Yeah, so our stress results, we had highly significant differences between the groups. People that clicked on the phishing mail were significantly more stressed than people that reported phishing mails. And this was also the case for our comparison question that we asked. So we can kind of assume that the clicking on the mail caused stress for those people. Yeah. So regarding our interview results, we saw some moderate stress with people. A few people mentioned that it caused moderate stress. This was not only because of the clicking. Some people also thought it was stressful just getting this email. So the campaign itself caused some sort of stress. But we also had a few comments, and this was for the open questions, that had really extreme reactions to the simulated phishing campaign, as you can see in this code. Yeah, we also looked at other emotions. For example, we saw that people showed anger when they clicked on the mail. People felt ashamed or said that they would feel ashamed if they clicked on the mail. And we also saw that people got really confused about the simulated phishing email. And this was not only the case if they clicked, but also if they reported. But yeah, on a positive note, people that reported felt glad and felt proud of themselves. So this is something that was good. Regarding the self-efficacy, we also had significant differences. The self-efficacy was much higher for people that reported compared to people that clicked, which also makes sense because they failed and they weren't successful. But here also we can't really derive a before and after result. So, but we can kind of derive it from the interviews that we did, because a lot of people that clicked said that the self-efficacy was lower than before, that they thought they could handle the simulated phishing email, but that after clicking on it, they weren't as secure as before. And yeah, the inverse was for people that reported. They thought that it was the same or maybe even higher because they were successful. Another thing was that people got little feedback and practically no encouragement from the company. All the encouragement was like sort of intrinsic motivation to not fail the test. Yeah, so to our discussion, what did we learn or what did we think about the results? Regarding the restricted communication, communicating about phishing is an important protection mechanism. And it can be kind of dangerous if you train people not to communicate about simulating phishing emails, because then they learn not to communicate it, not warning other people. So this is, yeah, we think that this is a negative thing about these campaigns. Regarding stress, stress can also have a series of negative effects on the well-being of employees, and it can lead to a decline in job performance. And this is especially the case if the stress persists for a long time. So even moderate stress, if it persists for a long time, can have these negative effects. And an interesting thing about learning is that a lot of people think that stress is really helpful for learning, that if you are stressed and learn something, that you have like this kind of trauma and you really remember it. But if you dig into the literature, it's really not the case for neutral information. It's really only the case for negatively arousing information. So learning the kind of boring steps to detect a phishing email is maybe, yeah, it's maybe not a good idea to do this if people are stressed, because they probably will forget it. Yeah, and the lower self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is an important thing in IT security. It can have positive effects on threat avoidance, phishing attack prevention behavior, and other things. So yeah, also not really good to lower the self-efficacy of your employees. So what do we recommend? Regarding the restricted communication, we recommend people to train employees to talk about phishing and not train them not to talk about them. So if you do a campaign or something like this, you could really say your employees to talk about this and to warn others, so that they kind of train and have a practical training. Yeah, to train about communicating about this. We think that this is important. Yeah, regarding stress, we think that it would be better to train people in calm situations, because stress can have a negative effect on learning. And if you do this and people get stressed, you can kind of lower the stress a little bit. Maybe tell them that it's not bad if they fail a test or fall for a phishing email. Yeah, we think that this would be a good idea. Regarding the self-efficacy, we should encourage people more. Companies should encourage people to detect phishing emails, and they should really practice reporting it, because we saw that people that reported phishing emails had a lot of positive emotions, and maybe it would be better to train them to report it instead of training them to fail for the simulated phishing emails. Yeah, but as always, we need more research. As I said before, the clear before and after effects are needed. We need to maybe in the future measure things before and then after to have a clear effect on stress and self-efficacy. We also need to see how repeated clicking leads to stress, because in this case, we only looked at one phishing email. And what we also didn't do was look at the other groups, people who ignored the phishing email or reported it in any other way. So this needs to be done in the future. And with that, I thank you.